What does it mean to be broken, and how does emotional incest cause us to be broken? Let's examine that on today's Ask a Shrink Hangout. So when we talk about the term being broken, what do we mean by that? Well, let's try to examine that a little bit. It's difficult to talk about because it's very subjective. Everybody's a bit different. Everybody has different resiliences in their life. Everybody recovers or doesn't recover from trauma in different ways. So when you're a victim of emotional incest, basically your identity has been stripped away to some degree. Now, what I mean by that is you're not allowed to go through your normal development processes where you just find yourself and you're okay with yourself and you try things on for size when you're age 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 or 15. You can't try anything on for size really because you're continually having to please the parent who is the perpetrator. You're devoted to them because they've emotionally taken you over. And part of what it means to be a victim of emotional incest means that you don't know that you're taken over, because somebody can hear what I just said there and say, well, if you're taken over, just rebel, just don't let it happen. Well, if you've been taken over by your own parent and you don't have anything to compare it to because you're so young, then you think that that's normal and nobody's coming to rescue you, the other parent who's not involved, if it's a 2-parent household. So that's another component to emotional incest, is you don't have somebody rescuing you. So if you have that perfect storm going on, you don't even know you're a victim of what's called emotional incest. You just think it's normal. And as the years go by and all the focus is on your parent, and as you become the little mini husband or mini wife, well, by the time you figure this out, if you ever figure it out, those years are gone where you would have had your normal developmental stages. It's just gone. Your identity has been thwarted. So in the thwarting of one's identity and proper developmental stages, they turn into a chameleon, which basically means you become really good at being a people pleaser because you have to please your parent. That's what you're trained for. You have to listen to all of their adult problems. Now, being a chameleon means that there's really no you there. That's part of the lack of proper identity development. There's really not a you there. You don't even know there should be a you there. So you become a chameleon. You become really good at changing yourself to whatever needs to be done. You can play this role or say this thing or that thing, any way to keep the peace or not make things worse at home or just placate others, because that's the result of being a victim of emotional incest. That's what it means to be a victim of emotional incest. So as you go into adult life with this as your foundation, we could say you are broken. Now, by broken, I mean that it takes a lot of work, sometimes a lifetime of work, to overcome the emotional damage that has been done to you when you were growing up. Now, I don't want this to be depressing or horrifying to people who are hearing this. This is not meant to be a downer. This is simply meant to show and shine light on what the damage is from emotional incest, because it tends to be ignored out there with a lot of people. Because it looks like love to surrounding family members, friends, neighbors, and so on, people just simply don't take it seriously and think, well, what can really be wrong? This kid, this boy or this girl is getting all kinds of attention from this parent, but they're not seeing, because it's covert incest, which means it's unseen, it's hidden. People don't realize what's really going on. So I know for myself, being a victim of emotional incest, I've been in therapy now for over 30 years as a way to continually cope with it and keep up with the brokenness. Now, what I mean by keeping up with the brokenness is there's stages in life as we go through therapy, and there's a lot to learn. But oftentimes it's the 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Well, sometimes with the 1 step back, depending on what the 1 step back is about, you have to relearn and trial and error method and go out there in life and push yourself and work through the feelings. And then that comes up at different stages of your life depending on what you're doing. So this can apply when you're in college, or when you're starting to date, or when the dating becomes a relationship, the relationship turns into marriage. If you have children, depending on your career path, you're challenged every step of the way because of the lack of foundation from growing up as a victim. Working with your identity is never final. It continues through life, and you have to make it be a lifelong process, a lifelong exploration. So for people out there who are struggling through life, this is meant to give you hope, because the first step is to look at what your potentials are. What are you all about? What feels good to you? As you hopefully are in therapy and get to know yourself and explore who you are, what are your potentials? And this is just for you, not what somebody's telling you to do or not what your conditioning is, whether it's cultural conditioning or gender conditioning or age conditioning. It's just where you go into your heart of hearts, something you weren't allowed to do as a child, and discover what your potentials are. What's your life purpose? What would mean something to you? What gives you joy inherently? What gives you a sense of satisfaction? What makes you feel good inside, which therefore builds your self-esteem and builds your confidence? And that's how we don't have to be a chameleon so much, if at all, because we now are grounded with a knowledge of our potentials and now our purpose. And this all involves trial and error. It may not be pretty. Some things may fall apart drastically as you're trying them because you're trying everything on for size, right? The trying on for size is something that normally would have happened when somebody's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, all through adolescence. But for a lot of us, we were robbed of that. So you have to do it for yourself now as an adult. Try things on for size and you'll see what fits or doesn't fit, but allow the process to involve the fact that you may get deeply upset or angry or feel exhausted in the process because you feel like you're playing catch up in your life, and that's okay. Let yourself play catch up. You're now able at this stage of your life to find out who you are finally. And after you've found your potentials and your purpose now, how are you going to use that in your life? What concrete steps or action can you now take as a result of what you're learning about yourself? And as you're taking these concrete steps, know that it may or may not be the right path immediately, but let that unfold that way. Don't try to direct or control every aspect about it. Some of this path, some of what I'm describing involves that you have to surrender to the fact that you don't know. You're trying to find out. So in trying to find out, know that you may fall on your face sometimes, but there'll be other times when you succeed magnificently. I know for me, I've always felt that I've been broken on some level, and I realize now at this stage of my life that that's never going to fully go away because that's such a part of my childhood foundation. In fact, in reality, there was no foundation. So the foundation I've created as an adult, I'm very proud of, and I love my life now, but still that lack of a foundation causes me many times to feel very broken. And I still have those feelings, and I still talk about them with my therapist. So this is normal. Part of my potential and purpose and taking concrete steps involved being a therapist. I wanted to use my emotional trauma from growing up and work with that, study psychology, and then help people in my private practice. So those are the steps I took to work with my emotional pain. What are yours? Something to think about. If you're a victim of emotional incest, you need to give this some thought. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this has been helpful to some of you. Please leave me some comments below if you'd like to share where you're at in this process. Please subscribe to my mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.